Okay. Master Bless.
In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. For the praise of Holy Father, the Lord Jesus Christ, God have mercy on us. Lord bless us.
Amen. Okay. Good evening, everyone. We're getting started with the Q&A we couldn't do yesterday because of the fact that, okay, I'll make it simple. Very simply, I had been up late on Saturday, and I wanted to make sure I was up for service, and I thought about taking a quick nap, and unfortunately, um, I realized it was even later, so I just stayed up the whole night and then did the service, and then went through. I had to get some errands done, and by the time it reached 5 o'clock, I realized that I had been up for 2 days. No problem. And so that is part of the reason that I could not do one yesterday. To be quite frank, um, I was out of it. There was no way I was going to do that. Let me remove this. And so today we're doing the Q&A that we were going to do we are going to do yesterday. I already actually have a couple of questions that were given to me for tonight's stream. One of them I definitely wanted to ask your guidance on this one, Felica, because it is a question that affects a lot of people. Give me 1 second here. I'm just going to put it up very simply. Okay, so I'll read the question with a very simple header. Okay. All right. So the question was, "Hi, Father Joseph. I have two unrelated questions that might be good for tonight's stream. And the first one was, what constitutes the sin of usury precisely? I asked this because I have an interview lined up at a bank this week. And now I'm wondering if working at a bank would make me complicit, in some sense, in usurious behavior. So I've seen different takes on what is and what isn't usury, so I figured I'd ask." So that's basically the first question. Um, and I'd say that one's always a tricky one. So what do you have? What are your thoughts on that, Felica?
Usury is charging is charging interest. That's what it
Yeah,
is. Simple as that. So if you give somebody a $10 loan, and then you say, I want you to pay me back $10.02 or 50 cents, that's usury. It's more and above the principal. If you know what I mean. The principal of
right.
money. That's simple as that. The only complicating factor that shows up is um, because you have things like inflation,
Mm-hmm.
more extreme forms of inflation. If you have a bank account or a savings account or whatever, and you get, I mean, I don't think unless you have millions of dollars, you're probably not really getting any actual interest on many of these accounts. I believe, right, Father?
Yeah, for most bank accounts, a lot of them
I
don't
I,
have
had,
interest.
I remember I had a just for purposes of getting a driver license and things, I have a bank account, and it's like $100, but I lose money. I'm not gain I gain no money in it. Every month I'm like down $10 because of charges. So you can say with some of these accounts, I told them I don't want any interest in it, but even before that I was still losing money. You know, before I had to tell them that. So that's what a usury is. It's as simple as that.
So now what if you're like a teller? Would that count as working in a kind of user, or is it just part of the whole
Um,
system?
I don't think it's a good idea to work in a corporate bank environment anyway, because you're going to have to deal with human resource people. If they find out who you are, if they find out what you believe, if they find out what you say, you're going to be in big trouble. And anybody,
Unfortunately,
and I'm sure you know, we all know what it is to work in those, even like a grocery store chain, like I years and years ago worked in. Um, you can't just say whatever your opinion.
right. And of course there are limits to things, but
Well,
the point.
even just normal Christian opinions, you're going to get in trouble with. So I would I would just advise my own opinion. Obviously, it's my advice is I would just simply not advise an Orthodox Christian to work in the banking system. That's my advice. You don't have to take it, but that I just think it's too much of a problem to involve oneself in. That's my own opinion about it. Someone may disagree. Um, if I think the question may be, what about the wider question of because obviously during the pagan Roman Empire, Christians worked in the civil government. We
Yeah.
know that for a fact. Christians were in the army. Now, the church, by and large, did not like the fact that the Christians were in the army, not because the army in itself was bad, but because there was paganism. There was all kinds of ritual problems involved in it. So that if you could avoid it, it was all right. But there was, other questions there. I mean, for example, um, you know, so to some extent, you have to consult with individual cases with some things. But again, I would just say it's. I mean, if I had the choice, I simply wouldn't work at a bank or any of those other considerations. It's my own view about it.
Okay, well, that makes I think that makes a lot of sense. It is a question that we do get occasionally because sometimes it looks like the only things available are in the financial sector. That's not always true, but sometimes it looks that way. And they're very good at advertising their business, so it's very understandable that people would think that. Okay, so in that case, let's get to the second question. I did see that Saba does have a question, so after this, we're gonna start taking questions, and I'll probably be doing most of those on my own. But then I see questions are coming in the chat. If you have questions, comments, etc., please feel free to put those in the chat. And we are going to get to the next question. Okay, and hold on one moment. The next question was actually about the Western Rite. And so somebody said, somebody had asked, I believe you have some disagreements with some of the Roko or Western Rite people, such as Father Aristobule Adams, about Father Augustine Whitfield and the history of which jurisdiction he was in and when. What exactly is the disagreement? Okay, well,
Father Augustine Whitfield had been a priest in the Moscow Patriarchate in the early 60s. And he left them. And he was sort of inconsistent. He joined multiple different groups. And I think at one point in the 90s, he joined us, I think. It was very difficult because he might just say the next week, no, he didn't. But he caused a lot of problems for us, sorry to say. And he had all kinds of weird ideas. He messed up liturgical books. For example, he would say things like you only have to say one secret, and it should only be the secret of the Holy Trinity, which none of us didn't know about he was doing. So, I mean, he was a very cantankerous person. Anybody who used to know the old Father James DeShane would tell you that Father James would say that nobody could get along with Father James.
Everyone who knew him said that.
That in and of itself is not necessarily. I mean, people have all kinds of problem. I mean, I've known people that only one or two, myself and one or two other people get along with. So I'm not saying. I'm just saying, ultimately, he and was not. Even if at some points and others, some point and another, he might have claimed he was with us, or he might have thought he was with us. He was never really with us. If you understand my meaning. Yep. There are those, as the apostle says, there are those who went out from us, but were never with us. So.
Okay. And so let me see here. Now, I think one of the things I will add that one of the things that probably led to some contention is that for a while especially but shortly before his death, he was under the care of Father Cuthbert Pierce, and who was part of our synod.
He had been a priest that had been ordained by Metropolitan John like in 1997 or 98 after Valedica John initially joined our synod, was reconsecrated a bishop in the Milan Synod, which is where the remnant left of it.
Yeah, what's left of the Milan Synod.
Yes, exactly. And then Father Cuthbert was ordained by then Bishop John. Yeah. Supposedly, Father Augustine went to communion and sacraments, from what we understand, to Father Cuthbert.
Right, and so we assumed he was Father Cuthbert was still operating as our priest.
But then again, this Father Cuthbert was an agent of chaos to some extent, and he caused a lot of problems in our church. And somewhat about that, Father Joseph.
Well, yeah, he was involved in the 2000. I think he left shortly before the 2012 schism, or shortly after.
He was in the midst of it.
He was part of the organized group that did split from our synod, and he was actually the first person caught on that. And when we confronted him with him, he fled and said he was no longer with us, taking Father Augustine Whitfield with him, unless Father Augustine Whitfield was himself involved. but we simply
Probably
don't know the details of
that's
the
probably the case.
conspiracy. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me one bit.
A lot of remember a lot of these people who came from the 50s and 60s and like the various Western Rite attempts then, um, they had a very confused understanding of what church life was.
Yeah.
So did a lot of other people, not just Western Rite people, by the way.
Right. No, of course.
And you're looking at a period in which they were, in the case, to be honest, in the case of Father Augustine, he was highly persecuted. At least he felt he was by others who thought were ethnic Orthodox. I mean, then again, his personality may have not helped them like that. And there was this sort of joke in the Row Corps that I heard years and years ago that people would call up, the Synod headquarters, and they would get Father George on the phone because he answered the phone. Bishop Gregory later.
Bishop Gregory Graba, yeah.
And they would ask Father George, "What do you know about this Father Augustine Whitfield?" And he would say, "We have no Father Augustine Whitfield." And the question is, was that simply Father George being mean, or was it really Father George saying, "Look, this is not a trustworthy figure. I don't know if he's really with us," or what have you.
Or he could just be saying he's not really with us, and Father Augustine could have been.
So I mean, it's when you deal with those types of personalities, there are people who are just obsessed with them, and they're these great figures. I mean, no, they're not. They're simply people who did Western Rite somewhat for decades and lived in sort of obscurity, and it's kind of incorrect to try to transform them and turn them into these like heroes of the golden chain or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be. I'd say the same thing about any of us too. None of us are, heroes or what have you. So, I mean, that's
you have to trust the Holy Fathers of the Church first.
You do not you do not get obsessed with modern people who claim they have new understandings that contradict the scriptures and the canons and the councils of ancient times. That's why, in fact, at the Seventh Ecumenical Council, they did not just say, "What did Elder so and so 10 years ago say?" At the Seventh Council, they said, "What did Saint Basil say? What did the fathers of the Cappadocian period say?" So we should always look to the ancient fathers rather than modern figures.
All right, we are now up to 5 questions. You might want to stick around for at least one of them.
I'll stick around.
Okay, so Sava...
taking cough drops so I can... I'm all right.
Okay. Say a prayer for Bishop Enoch. He's had that throat issue for a couple of weeks now. Coffee. Sava asks, I have a question for later. I have to preface this question of why I ask. When I visited Vladika Andre about flat Earth, he laughed it off. However, when I mentioned hollow Earth, mostly as a joke, Vladika said there's something to hollow Earth. Are there saints who talk about this? And then a sub-question, another thing about hollow Earth, Vladika said the saint said Hades was literally below us, and he mentioned modern science says the center of the Earth is actually somewhat hollow.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know much.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I get uncomfortable with saying where Hades is because that implies tangibility. And I don't know anyone who's touched Hades who's alive.
Remember, there were people in the scriptures in the Old Testament who got brought down alive into Hades.
That's true.
Like, remember when in the book of Exodus or the Pentateuch,
yeah,
there were Kor and the others who challenged Moses because they wanted to take the priesthood upon themselves, and it says the earth opened up and hell swallowed them. So they were brought down. The Psalm actually says or the Canticle says they were brought down alive into Hades. Now, does that mean they're still that? I don't know. It could be that they died shortly thereafter. Who knows exactly? But as far as I understand, there are no church fathers to talk about. When people say the hollow earth, however, you must understand they're not speaking about the hollow earth in the sense that maybe Hades is spiritually located in some dimension in the middle of the earth or something. The hollow earth, for most people, that has reference to the idea that the earth. The crust of the earth is like maybe only 5 miles thick, and you literally have like lizard people living I'm not kidding, like lizard people living in the middle of the earth. Agartha, there's a city called Agartha that's in the middle of the earth. And there's like a sun in the middle of it. And I mean, some of that I think almost is like Edgar Cayce or kind of weird stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
So I mean, I would stay away from, that idea that just because it has weird subsets.
Do the fathers ever talk about anything like this, or
Like
I
like a
assume
like a cities in the middle of the earth. I don't
I've
think
never
so.
heard of anything like that. Yeah.
I mean, I'd have to go. I just don't. I don't think so. If anyone knows of references, please post them. But I just don't think there is much discussion about it.
Okay.
I mean, the fathers don't really talk a lot about the shape of the earth anyway. They mention it in passing in some cases, but it wasn't really a vital concern with it. Because you have to remember, I mean, it'd be like someone asking me, what is the Orthodox opinion on taking, I don't know, resveratrol? What is the Orthodox teaching? It's like this extract from grape. It's a grape acid.
Resveratrol.
Yeah, resveratrol.
Yeah,
There's no church position. It's like I mean, what do you expect? I mean, it's like what is the Orthodox Church position uh, on uranium atoms or something like that?
yeah,
I mean, to some extent, there is a degree to which you have to use your own judgment on these minor matters and relative circumstances. So
yeah. No, absolutely. Okay, sweet. Next question comes from Europa and says, "What can you share about Matthew Raphael Johnson? I understand he was ordained in the Metropolia. He was.
he
Um,
was ordained a priest. He was removed from the clergy list in 2016.
and
Uh, in 2020 or 19, we had a personal reconciliation with him, but he wanted to. He did ask to rejoin us and to resume the priesthood, but he had already remarried, and that simply we could not do
you
that.
can't do that.
So
Yeah, once you
I have no hard. I don't really hear from him. My understanding is he's still with what's left of the Damascene Synod, which kind of broke up after Damascene died. So
I didn't realize he died. Wow.
on Damascene, yeah, he died like a year and a half ago.
Oh wow. Okay.
What happened is they had Loryites and this other group that had infiltrated, caused a lot of problems.
Yeah, I know. I remember that.
But that's a whole other situation. So
Well, all right. Next question we have. Baptiste Robin says, "Good evening. I had a question. I had an argument with a Rokor MP layman. I told him the Acts of Nicaea II are clear. Heresy separate men from the church. His counter-argument was to claim that St. Tarasius was ordained by iconoclasts, and so for most of Nicaea II's bishops. Do you know if his claim is true?"
probably about half of the people there were, or if not most, were ordained by iconoclast bishop. Now, St. Tarasius was definitely. I think the problem in St. Tarasius' case is I think he came from Cyprus originally, but he was not a bishop in Cyprus. So St. Tarasius, I believe, was in fact baptized in the church because the Cypriot church, even though Cyprus was part of the Byzantine Empire, it was autonomous and its church was autocephalous, and it never went along with the heresy and schism, and it never had communion with the iconoclasts. So, but St. Tarasius himself, I think he probably may have been ordained by people. If he wasn't ordained by heretics, he was ordained by people who had been ordained by him.
Yeah.
So, but you must understand, if you have to read session 1 to understand their view. And their view succinctly is this. Orthodox people should only go, according to St. Tarasius, look it up, okay, first session, the Seventh Council, says Orthodox people can accept ordination from heretical bishops if there are no Orthodox bishops left. If there are Orthodox bishops, then they have no reason to do that. That's because that was the question of the council about how to receive the iconoclast bishops.
Yeah.
That was the fun. So if you don't have an episcopate, so this is one of the keys to resistance and reforming synods and things like that, is you have to have an episcopate. Otherwise, you're just going to be stuck as a non-commemorator society that's trying to get an episcopate ordained for you. All right. So yes, heresy separates the man from God, and many of those bishops were ordained by heretics. Yes.
Okay. And now there was a sub question under that, and he said, "I also wondered if it wasn't problematic to use the Mansi compilation of council acts since he is a Catholic theologian."
I don't know what that is in reference to what they're talking about.
Well, I think what they mean is that Mansi, the publisher of the texts of Mansi, and I presume also this has been brought up also, J.P. Mania, that because they were Roman Catholics, that they should not be regarded. And I don't think that's fair because I think that they did their best to be as accurate as possible. That
Well,
would be like,
Meunier is interesting
yeah,
because you will notice, not always, but more than you would think. At the bottom of the page, he will put, for example, references about this is not in many manuscripts. This is
yep,
Latin. He'll say, for example, like, oh, this is, like Saint Augustine's letter to so and so. The Filioque is not in the earliest manuscripts of this letter. So
yep,
I think for a Roman Catholic in the 1840s to do that, a French Roman Catholic priest, he was trying to be honest and sincere. Meunier himself got criticized because I'm not saying people can improve on the works, and there are necessary manuscript researches to improve on editions. But Meunier himself sort of got in trouble because he included Saint Gregory Palamas in his editions of the Greek Fathers. Now he didn't agree with Saint Gregory, obviously he's Roman Catholic, but he felt like you're going to have to address Gregory Palamas if you want to be sincere about the differences between Orthodoxy and Papism and such.
yeah.
So there are. I think a lot of people, scholars and things, excuse me, nowadays will use the CCSL critical editions for
Right.
councils and things like that. Um, in some cases, we have major problems with ecumenical council acts in the sense that Greek manuscripts are sometimes 800 to 1,000 years after the fact. Like I believe the earliest manuscript of the Council of Ephesus in Greek is from like the 13th century, but we have Latin manuscripts from the 500s and such. And you can tell that they were translated from Greek into Latin and what have you, from what they say. Doesn't mean you can't find fragments and such, but anyway. So
All right. This is kind of related to a previous question. Refined Canon says, is Hades in our universe or is it more like a pocket dimension? I don't think it's a pocket dimension because that would imply that in some ways it's kind of like small and accessible to us. I mean, Hades is going to contain the souls of most of humanity for all time. So no, I wouldn't describe it as a pocket dimension.
I'm not, I'm not entirely certain. See, perhaps I'm wrong here, but if someone built a machine that could drill to the center of the earth, I do not think you would be able to find Hades any more than
No.
if you build a ship that could travel faster than the speed of light. You could travel all around the physical universe and you would never get to heaven.
Well,
Because
it's the Tower of Babel problem. God didn't take them down because they were going to reach him. He took it down because of their arrogance and thinking that they could.
yes,
Let me see here. Saba says, I have another oddball question. Reading Lives of Priestism, England Saints, usually the sources of the Bollandists and such mention King Arthur. Often, to my knowledge, St. Bede did not mention him. That's an interesting.
I would try to read original sources instead of simply. When they say Bollandists, do you mean Lives of the Saints composed by the Bollandists, or
I'm assuming that's what he means.
okay? King Arthur, I don't think Saint Bede mentions him. I think he may mention. There's this whole debate about this one British military commander from like 500 called Ambrosius.
Okay.
Some people think was King Arthur. So
Well, he does follow it up with, but I know of prophecies, whether pre or post-ism. I am unaware of King Arthur. Is there anything to this? I presume that
there are mentions of King Arthur in Welsh material from like the 800s.
Okay, so all right.
So
Well, certainly they believed him.
I think they believe. I think because the Welsh and the Cornish would have King Arthur would have been a British figure, Brittonic figure. He would not have been Anglo-Saxon. In fact, King Arthur fought against the Anglo-Saxon invasion. That was his main claim to fame in the oldest texts. So he led sort of the Celtic resistance to the pagan Saxon invasion, and there was a famous battle of Baden. I can't quite remember. I'm sorry, I'm taking cough medicine. I'm sick, but in the west of Britain, where they delivered a blow to the Saxon invasion, and they sort of held it for a few decades and such. But things about King Arthur. You have to remember, there's also a text composed in the 13th century French poem, I believe, called "Le Mort d'Arthur," or something, "The Death of Arthur," and it kind of weaves together a lot of legendary and historical material together. So where we get the modern understanding of King Arthur comes from the 14th century.
Okay.
Whereas I think the old archaic King Arthur probably would have been a Welsh, Britannic military commander who was probably a king because look, king, they had many kings. So I mean, so.
All right. Let me see here. Roko Remnant asks, did St. Justin Popovich break communion with the Serbian Patriarchate? We've gotten this question actually in our on the Discord, and I think we've covered a few things about that. The main witness of him saying he does not want the Patriarch in his presence and his will was Bishop Artemie. Bishop Artemie eventually did himself break off from the Serbian Patriarchate and formed another synod. Outside of that, it seemed pretty well known among not only Greek Old Counters but older Rokor people that he did. And then it seems that now that he broke communion with the Patriarch at the end of his life in his
my understanding was that he did not commemorate Patriarch Gurman.
Right. At the very end of his life.
But that he didn't necessarily claim he broke with the Patriarchate.
No, but with Gurman, he did not even want him to attend his funeral.
I think he would have viewed Gurman as simply not a legitimate patriarch.
Right.
So that's my understanding. People now the way to settle this is to say, does anybody have a recording of a liturgy done by St. Justin Popovic, and then listen to who he commemorates in the Great Entrance?
Yeah.
So
there is a reason for this is happening, Vladika, which I do want to give the background to. Somewhere around the 2010s, etc., right around the time that things became more uncomfortable between the Serbian Patriarchate and Artemia, a number of Serbian bishops came out and said this is a lie. This is all made up. So basically, they're affirmatively now claiming years after the fact that he did. Yeah, that he was commemorating the Patriarchate to his death and everything, even though we know for a fact that he was not invited to his funeral. He did not want him there.
Gurman's interesting because he lived until like 1990. He retired in 88 or 89 so that Pavla could get elected because Gurman was just one scandal after another.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that there weren't people who objected to him being a legitimate patriarch in the 60s when he was essentially appointed by the
communist government.
The communist government is sort of. I mean, was the Serbian Patriarchate that baddish? I mean, maybe it would seem unlikely. So maybe there are people who have more material on it. So
we're going to keep on looking for more material on it. The key here is that you have to ask the question in terms of how people would have reacted then. Because the people who we're talking to now, and I'll say our opponents now, who try to say that fighting from within is okay and that it's okay to tolerate heresy under your patriarch, etc., these people might have been fully willing to be on board with the Sergianists and the Soviets in the 60s, but they weren't there. And so the people that were there saw how these people really reacted.
I'm wondering here, just out loud, and this Gurman was elected when? When was he official? Like 62, 64?
I want to say 65, but give me 1 second. Patrick Gurman. That was 1958 to 1990.
Okay, 58 to 1990. All right. So from the perspective of people there, if they did not accept him as being legitimately elected,
keep in mind, this is the time of Bishop Dionysia when he first was elected, and so there were already the formation of the Free Serbians began.
Yeah. Well, the question is strange because they say, did Popovich break with the Serbian Patriarchate? Because Father Justin may have not thought he had left the Patriarchate.
Right.
That the Patriarch's he's not the Patriarch. This guy is just some guy. He's just some illegitimate bishop.
That's very, exactly. And I think a lot of people felt that way.
So in other words, he might more properly be considered like a non-commemorator of the early period.
Yeah.
He may have commemorated his local bishop, who I guess was Bishop Chrysostom of something or another. I can't remember.
Right. There was a lot of chaos in the Serbian church during this period. So this is part of the reason why you can't get a solid answer. There wasn't even a reunified Serbian church until 1992. With Patriarch Pavel. So that's keep in mind you have to keep the contemporary period, what's happening at the time, in context. Do
I
not
think
just
I think
accept
the
an answer
Russian
blindly
church.
like
I
that.
think the Russian church abroad, in like 1963, said that they really could not recognize Gurman, but they weren't
Yeah,
making
that's
a decision.
correct.
They said
Hmm.
so. That's 4 or 5 years after Gurman was elected. They had to make that decision, which implies that they had some sort of relationship, but that came to the point where the information was so damning against Gurman. But as I understand, the row course said something like, "We're going to break with him, but we're not going to make a big public spectacle of it."
Right, exactly. They
People were
did.
still grateful to the Serbian church for basically allowing Rokor to stay at, Sremski, Karlovaci, the place they stayed at.
Yeah.
So it could have been, that. Who knows? You need to find contemporary source material from the 70s to
Okay,
look.
and I guess in a related question, we have: do we have any proof that Saint Nikolai Velimirovich supplied Holy Chrism to Metropolitan Chrysostomos? This is really a question you would probably pass over to the archives of the True Orthodox Church of Greece, because I presume they still have the containers and the record of the chrism. As far as I'm concerned, that
Matthew
was well
Weiss,
known. That's
Matthew
common
Weiss,
knowledge.
Matthew Weiss used to claim he gave them chrism, which is interesting. I don't know.
Well, it's most likely that he gave chrism to the True Orthodox Church of Greece. They split, and both bishops had chrism from Metropolitan, from Saint Nikolai Velimirovich. So that's very possible and probable. It's the easiest explanation. Okay. Joshua Blind G asks, "What can you say about prayer of the heart?" Um,
You mean the
that's
Jesus
an
prayer?
Yeah, well, yeah, and I think that it comes from people talk about prayer of the heart, they're talking about the use of the Jesus prayer and the theology that's around it. Um, well, it's a good question. I myself,
I believe Saint
uh,
Nicholas the Recluse wrote a short book called Art of Prayer,
mhm,
and it's about 100. And then there's like the Little Russian Philokalia.
yeah, and I also recommend what's the name of that book? I recommend really simple books if you're going to be honest, because I really don't like what I call library orthodoxy, where people read more than they pray. So, believe it or not, short books are sometimes much more useful
The Little Russian
to learn with.
Philokalia is about 100 pages.
Yeah, that one's small. The Russian version of the Greek Philokalia, which is another one volume text. Um, and I'm trying to think. Prayer of the Way of the Ascetics by Tito Colliander, I recommend highly. But the point is, when you're doing prayer, you're supposed to. This is only for parsing the words, and the rest is prayer of the heart. It's not supposed to be reading about prayer of the brain, if that makes any sense. Are Barlam and Yosefat a legend actually accidentally taken from Buddha, or are they actual saints? They are actual.
No, they are actual saints.
Yeah, that if you go, the best book I can recommend, and it may be out of print now, is Holy Transfiguration Monasteries, The Life of Barlam and Yosef. They write they have a very large introduction of about a 62, I think it was 60 pages, explaining that it's a real stretch to even say that it was taken from Buddha, and there's no reason that the church ever believed in it. So no, it's just a filthy lie that people made up, and there's other filthy lies that come with that
So,
too.
so
Barlam and Yosef are the two of the most abused saints in church history.
well, just because you have a king and his son, and the king's son decides that he wants to become ascetic, I mean that story has been repeated numerous times.
Throughout church history.
Exactly,
Yeah,
and
that does that.
it's been. I mean, you can find stories outside of the church where that happened. I mean, it's
Mhm.
a common theme that of human behavior. So
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say this, but again, it's like this really poorly sourced text by Bonsall about same-sex marriage, and he uses the icon of Saints Barlam and Joseph, who are sitting on a horse, as proof that they're homosexuals. People
no,
say really sick.
that's not Barlam and Yosef he's talking about. That's Saint.
Pretty sure.
No,
I
no, no.
know
Because Barlam
what
and Yosef
he.
are father and son. He's talking about someone else. He's talking about
I haven't read the book in ages, so.
I know Boswell's. I know who you're talking about.
Hmm.
He died of AIDS, by the way, because
Well,
he was a degenerate homosexual who destroyed himself.
yeah, but he
That,
tried to take the church down with him, and it didn't
well, he
work.
tried to take as many people. Those types of people, unfortunately, take others down with their destructive lifestyles.
Yep.
They have to try to justify it. But Any other questions?
Okay, let me see here. Sava says, I know the Soviets tried to drill the deepest hole and made it about 4 miles down. They concluded it would be essentially impossible to go deeper than that. No idea. And then on the Jesus Prayer is a good book.
Yeah.
Actual Saints, their relics are in Kashmir. That the Compromise says hello. And let me see. Buddhists twisted their lives to make it sound like a story of the Buddha. Yeah, as I said, this is all debunked in the HTM version of the Life of Saint Barlaam
I mean, what's the earliest mention? What are the earliest mention? What are the earliest manuscripts of Buddhist texts? I mean, maybe,
well, yeah. Well, the claim is that first off, there's no parallel text, so it's not like there's a parallel text that you can compare it to that looks the same. That none of that's real. It's literally all a conjecture.
okay, well, that sounds about right for a lot of these people who write so-called scholarly books.
Yeah. Okay.
You have to publish something, or people forget about you.
Absolutely. Okay, and let me see. Okay, one more strange question we have. I have one more strange question. I'm not trying to be silly, but perhaps Fladika Enoch might enjoy it. Dragons. What can be said about them from an Orthodox perspective? I mean, we have dragons alive now. I mean, they don't breathe fire, but they're in Japan. They're just like iguanas or dragons, technically. I mean, what do you think, Fladika? I mean,
well, Satan is called a dragon, and it depends what you mean. Do you mean dragons in the sense of animals? Like maybe there were animals like that thousands of years ago.
well, I mean, there are flying dragons now that are literally large lizards that can
Well,
literally glide through the sky.
yeah,
I mean,
I mean,
those exist.
okay. So for all I know, there could have been species like that died out right after the flood.
Yeah.
That could have died off even before the flood. So I mean, it's like Saint Augustine asking questions. Saint Augustine's City of God, if you read it, he talks about these questions. So there is really no Orthodox church teaching on whether flying fire-breathing dragons were animals or not. But certainly, dragon in the ancient world meant a lot of things. Also, it could mean a large serpent. It could mean like if you had encountered the Komodo dragon or the monitor lizard, and you were a classical writer, they would have been dragons to you.
Yep.
Because you're gonna if you get close to you, I mean, a 20-foot long Nile River crocodile would have been dragonish. I think there was some sort of animal, obviously, that Saint George killed because he did slay. They called it a dragon.
Yeah.
All right, in the iconography, and I believe it was described as fire breathing, and it did eat women and children, and eat people and such. So whether that was an animal that was that or was some sort of supernatural phenomena, I'd have to do more research into.
I mean, also that one of the reasons the fire breathing thing takes up is because dragons are cold blooded. So whatever kind of creature this was, it might not have been. Joshua Blind G asks, "Is Fladika feeling any better? That cough sounds worse and worse." Yeah, I would. You know my advice, Fladika. I mean,
I went to the doctor and got antibiotics.
Okay. So. Oh, you got more?
No, I finished them. I already took them.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, you probably have to call for stronger antibiotics. Okay, Baptiste Robin says, do you have advice to give concerning religious tolerance to assure peaceful relations or telling the truth despite the consequence? I have a spicy family situation. I am always concerned when people talk about spicy anything because spicy is usually seen as a positive. If you're dealing with a problematic situation in a home, that's not something spicy. That's problematic. I would really recommend talking to your priest. If you don't have a priest, I would definitely not recommend talking about this on a public show, but you can reach out to myself, to Bishop Enoch, or to other priests in the Discord. There are priests in the Discord chat. Yeah, that sounds like something you want to keep more personal, not announce to the world and YouTube. Just saying. When is the line when compromise for peace becomes a sin? When you have to participate in it. Ultimately is what it comes down to. And I'm French, sorry if the word is badly chosen. No, it's not bad. It's fine. It's actually a good point because people do like using. The problem is that we live on the internet. People love stuff that's spicy, and it can actually cause others problems. Um, as I said, the line for compromise is very simply when you're forced to participate in something that you don't have to, and you know if you can walk away from it, you should. Um, there are different ways to walk away. There are also this is the thing, and there's also, and I want to make this clear because there are certain cases where these saints will actually use a very economic action to teach people. And what I mean by that, for example, is Saint John of Shanghai, for example, was talking to somebody who wanted to become a monastic novice. He was a young man, but the saint already knew that he was lording over the fasting rules over his whatever his mother cooked, even though she didn't know any better. At which point he forced the novice to eat a sausage on a fast day. Now, that doesn't mean that the saint was saying, okay, you can eat meat on all the fast days. What that was saying was this kid was so arrogant towards his poor mother who raised him and then decided, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to do it my way because the church says so. That's the church. That's using the church as an excuse to hurt your family.
Well,
and that's not acceptable.
It seems like it would have been better if the novice or the man had asked St. John to come talk to his mother about the fast rules instead of moving it over. I mean, why not just exactly right? He could have. Did he take pleasure in the fact that his mother was ignorant and he never tried to?
Some people do that. Some people do that, and that's exactly what I'm getting at. Let me see here. Okay, these aren't really questions or comments, but Sava said, showed a video by Jonathan Pagot about dragons. It seems like there's two opinions on dragons nowadays that are natural and spiritual. Pagot mostly dealt with the former, but I'm interested in the latter. We call Satan a dragon. Some saints will write demons will take on the forms of dragons. Well, they could. Demons can take on the forms of an angel of light. They can take on a lot of different forms. When dragons appear to men, do they use natural imagery or is it supernatural? I'd probably say both. On another note, with Jonathan Pagot, I don't know. I know that it was talked about on the Discord, but it was very interesting, Vladik. I don't know if you saw this thing that Gavin Ortland, the Protestant preacher, basically took apart one of Jonathan Pagot's. He was on, I guess, another show talking about orthodoxy, and it was pretty interesting because of the fact that Pagot was kind of towing an ecumenist line where he was saying orthodoxy is the church, but Christians who aren't orthodox are still part of the church, and he was creating kind of a gradation of Christianity. And Ortland correctly points out that historically in orthodoxy, and he goes from St. Cyprian all the way to the Council of Jerusalem in 1672 and later to explain, no, the Orthodox Church believes itself as the ark of salvation, and if you're outside of it, you aren't saved. So why is the current World Orthodox position, and he says the Orthodox position, so inconsistent? At which point I've been inviting him. I hope that he considers it to talk to us, because I've tried to reach out to him for a couple of years now. But he did point out that World Orthodoxy's inconsistency on the
one thing on which World Orthodoxy is consistent about.
Well, I said inconsistent, but okay.
Yes. They're consistent about saying we cannot possibly be Christians.
Yes, that's true. So they don't know where the church is, but they don't.
It's not us.
Yeah, they don't. We know where the church is, but not where it isn't. Except those guys. We definitely know it's not those guys.
They bend over backwards for Protestants, Roman Catholics, Monophysites, Nestorians, liberal, gay, abortionists, Lutherans, and the WCC. But one thing they can't tolerate are people like us.
In any case, I don't see any more questions. We've been going on 45 minutes. If I'm going to give it I'm going to give it a couple of minutes, but a minute 45 because I know it's a Monday, and I know a lot of people are watching right now. But again, also, unless a bunch come in, but Vladika, if you're not feeling well, I mean, if you want to relax, you can. But I'm probably going to close out. Oh, okay. There's hello there, Orthodox Traditionalist Publications. That's Subdeacon Nectarius' organization. How's it going? I cannot find the HTM book of Barlam and Josaphat. Do you know where to find it? Give me a moment here. And Josaphat, I believe it's. I really hold on. I'm gonna have to use Google. I don't like using Google. Let me try Dogpile. Mm-hmm. Let me see here. There's a lot. They've made a lot of modern versions of the Barlot and Joseph book. Josephat. Let me see here. Let me see here.
So did we have had some reaction and views for the last video about the Talmud?
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion about that, and I think it is of interest to people. Give me a second because I'm trying to find the book for you. Let me ask real quick before anything else. Um, Ethan, are you on our Discord? Because I'd like to see if I can find it later tonight. Because it's going to take me a while to dig through it. I don't. There's so many new Barlam and Joseph books. I would suggest going to our Discord. I'll keep looking for the one that I found in HTM, and I will get it because it does have that very nice big description and explanation as to why that's not true. Let me see here. Did the Romanian Patriarchate become Sturginist with the 1945 invasion? What is the relationship between the Bucharest Patriarchate and communism? That is a much more complicated question because even at times where the royal family in Romania was communist. The problem is that that was more a modernist renovationist uniate impulse that started kind of the persecution of Orthodox and eventually the formation of the true Orthodox in Romania. But yeah, it does start later than the others. Granted, the Bucharest Patriarchate was, in fact, at one point, it was subservient to the Soviet authorities, but there were other problems with it as well.
Well,
And let me see.
remember that after World War II, in that regards, I believe um, I believe that there was a Metropolitan Vissarion Pew,
Yeah,
and he joined Rokor because he there were people who were upset about the capitulation to the communist party and such, and he was the one that, along with Saint John Maximovich and one other Rokor bishop, ordained Bishop Theophan Ionescu and such. So I know a little bit about that. But problems in Romania started in the 20s. I mean, arguably, I think there is some evidence that it goes back a few decades before that because what was happening is many many Romanians were being sent to German universities in the 1890s and early 1900s
mm-hmm.
to be trained in quote unquote theology there, which was a terrible, horrific idea if there ever was one to send people there. So that sort of helped prepare the wave of modernist inculcation by having clergy educated at and then of course remember Miron Cristeu had originally been, I believe, a Uniate priest, maybe a Uniate bishop, who joined the Romanian Patriarchate back in the 20s, I believe, right? And and the deal he made was the excuse me the ecumenical patriarchate would recognize him as a patriarch if he imposed the new calendar and the new Paschalion, which they did initially. And that's what if they imposed a new calendar, then the next year they brought about the new Paschalion, which it was the new people didn't like the new calendar, but then they brought in the Paschalion issue that like was much worse, right? Because
Yeah,
no justification. That's really what set off the true Orthodox movement to be a big movement in Romania was when they adopted the Paschalion. The Patriarchate adopted the uncanonical Paschalion. I think a year later they went back and just kept the new calendar, but kept the Orthodox, but returned to the Orthodox Paschalion. But it was already too late for any hope of you know other for the Romanian Patriarch. I think they could keep these people. So
okay. Let me see here. Okay. So we were talking about Justin Popovich being a non-commemorator. Well, not recently, but we were about 25 minutes ago. But if you, I mean, I don't know. Do you? I forgot to put in a link for anyone who wants to join in. So give me a second. I'm gonna just put that in there, and I'm gonna put that in the chat. So let me just quickly do that. I'm I am totally behind mentally on stuff because I've had to do a few different things today, and I was all over the place. Give me just a second while I try to put this in blue. Give me a moment. Um, Let me see here. Okay, just waiting here. Let me see if there's other questions while I'm waiting for that to work. Um, okay, I guess this is a kind of a question. So we'll get to I mean, we've already discussed it in the sense that it is unclear until we get more sources on it because of the fact that the main source of evidence that that Saint I say Saint Justin because I believe he was a saint did because I believe that he really did stop commemorating the patriarch and that's why Artemiev ultimately broke off from the Serbian patriarchate. But if they want to call him a liar now because there's no one left or anyone who was a witness is dead, then I guess they could do that. But it's your choice to believe it or not. Is there a comprehensive list of every heresy condemned by the Orthodox Church? I know such a thing exists for the Roman Catholics. The closest we have is the Synaxarion. But that's not updated all the time. It's updated. Usually the only ones we list are the really big heresies that make a big deal. Like I don't think they didn't add in Yugoslavia, for example, to the Synaxarion, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people did add ecumenism to the Synaxarion. So I guess it's really the scope of the heresy before it makes it out. So I'm not aware of a comprehensive list. Well, we're going to keep trying. I really recommend going to our Discord and checking that out. On Romania, I know from 1930 to 1945, the Uniate Church of Romania was in communion with the new calendarists. There's a debate that they joined because the Uniates willingly wanted to do ecumenism, while others claimed the state made them do ecumenism. Was this a big reason why the True Orthodox in Romania agreed? Did any new calendar clerics leave over this? I would imagine many did, and I would also imagine most likely, yeah, that was a pretty big motivator.
Synodicon.
Yeah, the Synodicon.
Not the Synaxarion. There's a Synodicon.
I said this. Yeah, I'm dumb. It's the Synodicon of Orthodox.
The Synodicon is the
anathemas. I said Synaxarion, which is the lives of saints.
Yeah,
there's people have asked about lives of saints all week, and
there's the Great Synodicon, which a lot of people don't read, but if you read it in full on Sunday of Orthodoxy,
it's long. It's like 55 pages.
And then there is also the Synodicon of the Holy Spirit, which is technically supposed to be chanted on Holy Spirit on Pentecost Monday. And that contains a lot of other heresies that are condemned. So if you took those two texts, you get
a lot of them. But smaller heresies didn't really make it.
Well, remember, a lot of heresies are recycled older heresies.
That's true also. Okay, let me see here. Hold on. I found a source from 1971. Okay, I'm assuming that's about the breaking communion with German. I just got an email from Greece about it. Oh, okay. Well, let's. I don't know if you got the time. You can pop on and show us if you'd like. But is Sophiology a condemned heresy?
Yes, it was condemned by the Russian Church abroad in early 30s. Yeah, even the Moscow Patriarchate had no choice but to condemn it.
Yeah, it was only the Paris Synod that didn't.
Technically, they censured him and they said it wasn't Orthodox teaching, but they never did anything against it.
Yeah, exactly. If I seem a little frustrated,
there were people there who were against it, but they weren't going to get Meshwan Evlogi to condemn
do anything.
Because remember that a lot of the Paris exiles were these sort of effete philosopher type Russians. Like watch
if I seem a little bit frustrated with the question, I had this exact discussion on Twitter about 3 hours ago.
Oh, okay.
It's like these questions are recycling themselves. But in any case, it's not. It's a condemned heresy.
St. John Maximovich wrote a book against the heresy. A little book.
That's handy. No, I didn't know that. So that would be handy. Okay, and so I don't see any other questions. OTP, if you want, we can talk later about the object. I know that I was gonna have a discussion because, as I mentioned on March 4th, and now I see that's actually not that far away. I will be having a discussion on. We'll be having a discussion on True Orthodoxy with Patrick Craig Trulia and Father John Whiteford on his channel. So that's something to look forward to. And let me see here. Yeah, Ethan said, "Don't worry about it." My priest, okay, he probably will know that. If not, feel free to join our Discord or join the cafe. One more time. I mean, this is something that I have not brought up enough, but I will bring up more often, as much as I bring up asking for assistance, because this is basically my work at this point. Um, the Afrosinos Cafe is back. We are still working on it. It's still a work in progress, but there are people using it, and it's a great historical resource. So you definitely want to check it out and sign up if you haven't already. Let me see here. Okay, and yes, Ethan's looking forward to that stream. Great. And on the Orthodox veneration of the Mother of God. Yeah, St. John Maximovich's work on that does answer sophiology. Father Antonio says the cafe is a wealth of information. So definitely give that a try. We are on minute 56 just about, and we're going to give that another few minutes. If anyone wants to pop on, if anyone wants to ask a question, and then I think we'll close it down in an hour or so. And we'll see. We'll of course be back next Sunday, our normal date. I definitely do want to apologize for yesterday. I know it was on short notice. Things happen. I am going to try to schedule these well in advance and make them a little more, for lack of a better word, accountable. And this is an interesting question that just came up. How would the Roman Patriarchate be restored? Could one be created, or would one of the popes have to convert? Either of those would work. Unfortunately, either of those would also, I can only imagine, be, just to put it mildly, chaotic, catastrophic. I mean, you have to understand that you're talking about Rome and you're talking about the Vatican. So when we talk about this, let's say I don't know, we'll make something up here. Francis dies and the next guy is like, I've decided to become Orthodox after that nightmare. The first layer of people that they'd be dealing with are the Swiss guards, which means good luck getting out alive. The second layer of people they'd be dealing with would be the College of Cardinals. Again, you're talking about some of the richest men in the world dealing with one of the richest men in the world. The question of whether or not you get your platform. The point is, there's so many ways that can go badly that I really cannot. I have no idea. Let me see here. It would be a very complicated situation.
Who are they going to go to?
Exactly. What would be more likely is what happened, like with Milan, with our synod, and it would just have to happen larger. You'd have to have more Orthodox bishops and synods in Italy before they could elect the Pope, etc. And then the question of where to put them. It would be chaotic. It's not a simple like that question you can answer. Let's see. I would love more of a deep dive on Talmudism. Well, we've done that, so maybe we'll do that again. It was a very popular episode. Sava says, are there good sources for lives of East Syriac saints before the Church of the East fell to heresy? Not really. I mean, most of the sources back then, most of them are, I think, shared. And then they have deviant sources, sort of like something of a prehistorian synaxarion for saints nigh forgotten.
There are manuscripts in Sinai. You see, Syriac was used by both written Syriac was used by both Orthodox Christians, who were called the Melkites, by the way. Melkite later only became Uniate term after the
1724 split.
So you would have Orthodox Syriac writers, you'd have Monophysite Syriac writers, and of course Nestorian. So there are. I have years ago I did some manuscript research, because I believe there were some Latin manuscripts that maybe they had at Sinai. So, but anyway, going through the digitized text, you have a lot of Syriac material written by Orthodox Christians. So you'd have to because when you say the Church of the East, you're really talking about Iraq and Persia. So sort of saints before the Nestorianism. I think like what there's Saint Ephraim the Syrian, but he's from
Yeah.
the others. But you're really talking like Saint Afrahat would be a saint from like the early 300s. Saint Jacob of Nisibis, I believe it. The earlier Saint Jacob or older Saint James of Nisibis, not the later one. And but I think you may have some menus. There's one thing I did learn is that like a lot of Eastern material is very late.
Mm-hmm.
Simply because I mean you do have a lot of material that is early, but it's like fragmentary. Like you have to piece together pages and things because during the time of Islam, the Muslims just destroyed a lot of
destroyed massive amounts of stuff.
And even if they didn't intentionally do it, if you have a battle over a city, then there's a fire. Well, guess what? The whole library there goes 100,000 manuscripts. They're gone forever. And remember also during the Diocletian persecution, which is even before this period. The Roman government just destroyed a lot of manuscripts also,
mm-hmm.
and such. So there's all those layers of damage and destruction. But like I said in the beginning, we have manuscripts in Latin from the early 500s, or about 500 AD of the Council of Ephesus. But we don't have a Greek manuscript until the 12th or 13th century. All right, and this is so. All right.
Well, I think in that case, I'm not seeing any more questions. We've hit the hour and 1 mark. I think we're going to call it a day here. I will probably be back on to do another video later on in the week, most likely on Wednesday or Thursday. There is probably going to do another review of another video. And so in that case, no, refined canine, that doesn't count as a question. I'm sorry. I'm not even answering that. Okay. Well, in that case, I'd like to thank everyone for listening, everyone for contributing, for asking questions. Everyone has been a support to the channel since we've started going in serious. And again, you'll be seeing me again next week, and we've got a lot more in store. So if you want to reach out to us, you can reach out to us on Gab. Bishop Enoch, you use Gab a lot, especially for the Western Orthodoxy group. And there's our Discord. That's for more of the NFTU stuff. And again, I welcome everyone to try the Afrosinos Cafe. It's definitely a great historical resource. So I'd like to thank everyone for being here, especially Vladika Enoch, and who we ask, again, prayers because we want him to feel at his best. With nothing else there, no problem the machine lies, and no problem death to compromise. Have a great night, everybody. A link to Western Orthodoxy Gab. There's a group section, but I can get that for you. Give me 1 second, because I'll just put it in here. And so that's actually where our first question came from. And so I put that in the chat. There, death to compromise. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you. May God bless you and keep you richly, and we'll have a good night. Amen.